Welcome to Resilience Redefined. I'm your host, Michael Ostrolenk. This show is about building better humans, institutions, and systems. On the show, I'll be interviewing many different experts from across many different fields, including human optimization, health and fitness, team building, mind-body medicine. In the institutional space, we're looking at different institutions and how we can create new ones, new models and maps, including in medicine, in education, in intelligence community, in law enforcement, in the military, especially in the special operations community. Thanks for being here and enjoy the show.
Today's guest is Michelle James, creativity coach, facilitator, and founder of Creative Emergence Coaching. With over 2 decades of experience supporting individuals and teams, Michelle helps people break old patterns and tap into deeper levels of insight, imagination, and adaptive action. Her work blends applied creativity, somatics, systems thinking, and group process, designed to cultivate more generative, life affirming ways of working and being. She's also the author of Pattern Breaks, a facilitator's guide to cultivating creativity. Good to see you, Michelle. Welcome back.
Thanks, Michael. Good to be here.
So, actually, even before we jump into the topic tonight of resilience and creativity, I was literally reminded of 20 years ago, because I read the Somatics piece when I was introducing you, that I think I walked into a meeting and I was off kilter, probably from carrying something heavy.
Mhm.
And you saw it because you're very somatically oriented and you fixed me.
Oh,
You
right.
remember that?
Yes.
You got me on the floor like right before we started the meeting and did your magic, and I was completely good for the rest of the day.
I remember that. In fact, I think you even went to that was the core somatics
Yeah,
um and you even went to see Kay Miller after that, I think.
that was the course of Maddox, and then I did train with her up in
That
Pennsylvania.
yes. Gosh, that was a long time ago.
Yeah,
Um
definitely.
yeah. Well, I remember that too. And I remember actually when I walked in a little bit longer than that, around the same time, to the inner goal leadership training, and you were there with Suzanne,
Oh my
and
goodness. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's when I initially met you and some others that we've known each other now for a long time.
So today, Michelle, we're going to talk about creativity and resilience and emergence. It's actually it's a great conversation I've been looking forward to because obviously I do a lot of work around resilience, but I never really thought about the whole creativity side of resilience the way that you'll be unpacking that in today's conversation. So tell me about the connection between resilience and creativity in your work.
Sure. Well, resilience has become, if not probably one of the number one, leadership and life skills that we need right now, the capacities. And in my work, I see creativity as absolutely essential for resilience because part of being resilient is breaking patterns and breaking habits and adapting and responding in new ways and
Nice.
bouncing back. Although, I see it kind of as bouncing forward. So
I
you're
love that.
not,
Yeah, yeah, right.
not bouncing back to where you were. Something happens, you might have got derailed, disheveled, unsettled, distracted, something's off. And then in the bouncing back, you're really bouncing forward because you're a more resourced part of yourself. And so there are many techniques and practices to help people get there. I know you do many of them. And I focus a lot on the ones more around whole brain creativity to do that. And
I love your use of the word resource because that's one that you don't hear a lot in various coaching and psychological schools of thought. And I find that it's so, so important. Could you define what you mean by resource and
sure.
how people can kind of cultivate those resources through the work that you do?
Yeah. So there's, resources outside of ourselves are things that we can use to support our journey or our research or whatever we're doing. And we also have inner resources. And I work a lot with the inner resources, the inner landscape, that inner place within us, that inner wellspring of creativity. And so when we have access to both our internal resourcefulness and the resources within us, like the animating life force, that
Right.
just comes in when we're in touch with that, and we also are more present to our environment externally, then we are much more resourced.
Mm.
That's how I'm using it. Like, we have resources that beyond what we know. We always have more resources than we know. And so when we feel resourced, then something happens and you're not aware of something, or you um, have a setback. It's like going to this inner place within you
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
help guide your path or illuminate something.
At Sealfit, we call it a Kokoro camp, or not Kokoro camp. We also say Kokoro camps. Kokoro, indomitable spirit. And what we'd find is, we do these 55-hour no sleep experiences. After a while, your body just is giving up because it's effing exhausted. Your emotions are all over the place. Your mind's playing tricks on you because you're exhausted. You haven't slept and you've been training for 20, 30, 40 hours. But you tap into that resource, that spirit, that aspect of yourself that's non-quitting, that keeps going. So for me, that's the one example of something I just heard you share.
Absolutely. And I love that you're saying that because
Mm.
it's pointing out to how that informs different parts of ourselves. So, here someone didn't sleep for that long, and then they can access that. I call it the creative source because I find it's a life generating, infinitely benevolent, life giving, life affirming source within us. Uh, but and it's very practical too. It's the animating life force you would see, that makes a flower bloom, that makes a tree branch, that,
Mhm,
it's not
mhm.
it's 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 very accessible in our world. And when we access it, we are more resourced. And also similarly to what you said about, when because I know you work a lot with the pushing the physical limits, and then how do you get be even more resilient in there. A lot of times people, when they're looking at their creativity, they will feel like they've hit the edge of what they know. They reach the edge of their imagination, or they reach the edge. Oh, there you go. Oh, right on cue. The edge of what you know. Perfect timing, Zoom. And they reach the edge of sort of what they know. And so what people do is they often will then go back. Their tendency at first is to go back into what was familiar. So they go back into a different part of the brain, what they remember or whatever. But if they can hold that edge and stay there, and sometimes there are ways of cultivating it, you know, they will eventually make a breakthrough to that next level of that same life force that you were talking about, the creative source, because it's infinite in what it will deliver for us. And so a lot of times people think they're not creative or they're not original thinkers or they can't. It's just because when they get to the edge, they've turned around or they've gone in the familiar. Anybody, if they can kind of, move through that threshold once they hit the edge, can access that.
Actually, you partially just answered my question, so that was awesome. Like you kind of like read my mind. I have a basic idea, and I'm curious on your take on this, that people tend to be conservative, not politically necessarily, but like energetically. And it's
Mhm.
a survival strategy. You don't want to spend too much energy because you don't know where the next food's coming from. I mean, less so now, but this is a kind of an evolutionary adaptive thing. And I always thought if that is in fact true, there's usually it seems to be a subset of people in our world who are not like that, who seek novelty, and they're the ones who are on the cutting edge of our culture, pushing us in innovation and things like that. But I think you just answered the question. I was like, but I can't imagine that not everyone has some version of that capacity to be creative and go beyond the limits of themselves or the culture. So you mostly answered that question, but I'd like you to address that even more, the universality of creativity, and that we don't have to be locked into the rigidity of our belief systems of how we've always done things is how we should always be doing things into the future.
Absolutely. So first part of it is yes, absolute. Every single person has an access to kind of like an infinite wellspring. Not everyone trusts it. Not everyone feels easy access to it. Not everybody feels the drive to even be on the cutting edge or the novelty or, the blue sky, blank slate, blank, canvas creators. But everybody has access to it and everyone is creative. Now, as far as there are many reasons why people don't access it. A lot of it is we were not socialized or educated um, to do that. We were actually educated to kind of, or at least our generation, kind of to repeat back and not really question things too much.
Mhm.
So, but once we start questioning every assumption from the belief systems, from societal programming, from why do I believe what I believe, for what stories do I carry, then we really start to unearth and get more connected to that sort of creative wellspring. Three of the biggest, I would say, challenges to that are the fears of the fear of failure. Somebody's afraid of failing and looking ashamed. Whereas from a creative lens, there is no failure. It's just like, like a kid walking, a baby walking across the carpet. When they're first walking, they will fall and they'll get up and fall again. And no baby's ever like, oh, I'm a failure.
I quit. Yeah.
I guess I'm not designed to walk. They just do. So if we can embrace that kind
I
of,
love that.
it's not failing when you're exploring and discovering and learning and things don't work out. Or even if you are seasoned and something doesn't work out, it's just like, oh, okay. I love it. Improv. There's an improv game called New Choice. Like it's just like, oh, okay, new choice. Let's try something else. A fear of being wrong.
Okay.
That's a huge one. And that puts blocks in everything. Like so many people, the desire to be right or the fear of being wrong can absolutely block the creativity inside of an individual or a group. And so it's easy to move from that to saying, I fear being wrong. At least then there's an opening. At least acknowledging I don't like to be wrong is the first step to an opening, then to moving forward. But if it's held so deeply, because some people's identity is with being right or being something. And
Yeah.
so if they're wrong, there's actually a breakdown of a deeper part of their identity. And that can be very challenging for some people. So sometimes it's just like, okay, this is a fear I have. And I'm willing to create a little space. Not every single part, we're multiple parts, we're
Yeah. Yeah.
multidimensional. Not every part of me fears it. There are parts of me that don't fear being wrong. There are parts of me who would, and so it suddenly kind of expands the
I
inner
love that.
creative playing field.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, yeah. And then the fear of the unknown. We tend to fear what's unknown. Yet, when we're young, the unknown was just this, like a joyful place of discovery.
Yeah. Exactly. I love that. Yes. Yes.
You're finding something new and you start cracking up. Something weird happens and the babies start cracking up. You go to a haunted house or you do, peekaboo, like everything is, this discovery is innately part of who we are. And then and then people are climbing and exploring, creating, and then all of a sudden we get educated and sit up straight, do this, do that, and so a lot of it is socialization and training. It's a belief system, but I can tell you, I've worked with thousands of people, facilitated thousands of groups, and worked with thousands of coaching clients, and everybody is infinitely, truly creative. It's just creating the conditions for that to emerge. And that is part of being resilient is
Right.
you tried this, you used to do this, it no longer works. Now what do? Get in discovery mind.
I love the kind of experimental nature of that, as an aspect of mindset. Like, oh, let's try new things and experiment. And a broader frame I like to think about is playfulness.
Yeah.
It's not rigidity. You're being much more playful and not. A lot of people are like playful. That's a childlike thing. I'm like, yes, I don't mean it. I do mean it in that way, but yeah, adults be playful in that kind of way you just described. And I love that. I heard, I want to throw in the somatic stuff because I can't help myself, especially since you're a somatic practitioner. I heard you said holding on to,
Mhm,
and in my mind goes, yeah, it's not just a psychic thing. We're
mhm.
actually in our nervous system holding on to old ways of being, fear, insecurities, whatever they happen to be. And I'm wondering, oh, how do you work with people that integrates, like, you have to shift the nervous system somatically, not just cognition, how they think about things. Can you give me some examples of how you think about that and how you work in that space?
Sure. So, in the work I do, I tend to, let's say it's with a group,
Mhm.
before we would even get into the spaces that could bring up discomfort or real
Yeah.
that the space where something could really be lodged, or they're bumping up against something that before we would go there, I would sort of ease them in with warm-ups or warming up, ways of connecting with themselves and with each other. And always I do get people in the body first, right, very quick, like, because what there may be an initial discomfort, um but I you start with making it very safe, like doing something everyone can do,
Nice,
and
nice.
then over the course of either a coaching session or a facilitation, you get into more sophisticated, techniques, but you start with making it safe. The earlier you get someone in the body, the better, even if it's just becoming aware of their body and feeling something or moving. I love, because I work with creativity and I've done lots of improv, and I love, so I'm with you with the playful. If you It is true that some people don't, that feels playful is childish, but it is childlike.
Yes, yeah,
Big
yeah.
difference, and the childlike nature is just, it bypasses so much resistance. So if you can get people into just sort of something fun and playful in the beginning, all their endorphin, their um, neuroplasticity will just start moving. The endorphins will be flowing, and they will be more receptive to what you would have to when you get into deeper things. It is true the nervous systems, you want their nervous system to feel safe enough. You creating a foundations and conditions for their nervous system to feel safe enough that they'll go with you beyond their comfort zone.
Yeah, listen to you, I'm thinking, like, because I know you're working with individuals, but you also work with
Yeah.
teams, and I'd love for you to talk about the different groups you've worked with as well. But I'm just thinking, like, wow, just with my couples or anyone who does couples therapy or coaching, what a great framework to think about. Like, how do you get them feeling safe in their bodies, interpersonally with each other? Because embarrassment is a thing. And there's expectations, like just who he or she is, and I expect them to act in a certain way, and they break that mold, it can be threatening to the relationship.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I love what I'm hearing you say. Um, Talk to me a little bit about some of the, like, exercises you might have folks do in the group as warm-ups, as an example.
Sure. And just to let you know, on occasion I'll coach couples or
Oh,
business
great.
partners, and we even do things to create the conditions at first,
Mm,
to shift their inner, to shift to pattern break, to do some pattern breaking things so that when they really talk about the real issues. But I would tend to work with creativity and emergence. So what I tend to do is less focused on healing trauma and more focused on, what they want to co-create together.
right, right,
Okay,
right.
so that's um one of, and it depends on the group, and so I will do different things with different groups. Um, a lot of times they know I come from the creative lens, and, and have done different things. So they already are expecting and knowing this is not going to be just sitting back, taking notes and looking at slides. Like they're going to be in it. So the first thing I do is I just set tell I give them a few principles that help make it safe for them, and let them know, the difference between safety and comfort, and how I can I have guarantee this is safe, but it may not be comfortable because not, new. And I said a few things, but then I get people in the body, and it could be something as simple as walking around, and just randomly walking around, and then having them exaggerate that walk a little bit, or having them just walk the opposite of the way they walk. And so, but and their initial tendency is How does the opposite of what the way I walk look? And and invite them into, without, let their body show them what its opposite, it not the head show the body, but the body show that. So I start or many way. I mean, that's just one, but the idea of the body is showing the head isn't showing the body. So that right there is a pattern break. That right there creates starts to create a little sense of trust, because every single person can do that. And this is true even if somebody's in a wheelchair or has any physical, because you just set it up in a way that, they do, everybody does their version of what it, there's no right or wrong. It's not what I'm doing, there. Um, I do, all kinds of pattern break. I get people pattern breaking in their body. Very, could even be you're sitting down and you just have your, you play music, and every 5 minutes you're moving your, like on Zoom even, you could just be like your hands are moving in a certain way, and then you say like new choice, and then now they move in a different way, and a new choice. And so you're just breaking the pattern. Brain Gym has a lot of activities online, like kind of exercises. But w- with my coaching clients, I do some of that, but we also do a lot of intention setting. And I also work a lot. Reframing is a big way to break a pattern for resilience. Most people hold a story as if the story is true.
Nice. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And you can reframe it as part of a larger journey or a larger picture. For example, one type of reframe is, rather than everything's not working out, or I'm failed, or I'm not good, one type of reframe is, in an emergence, like any new birth, there's an expansion and a contraction. And oftentimes people will get that initial energy, that burst, they want to follow it. And then it that's the expansion. It's always inevitably just like a baby being born, followed by contraction. So, or sometimes a reframe of just knowing they're in a contraction, a natural contraction of the emergence process, that sometimes is enough to just help someone let go of, and the layers of stories they might have about what's wrong with them or what they're doing wrong. And all of a sudden, just that alone can open up the creative playing field immensely.
I love that. I'm reminded in the early 2000s when you and I first met and hung out. I actually was hired to go work for a nonprofit. I got flew out to Colorado and help them with like 3-day mission building type of exercise. And I remember like halfway through day one, the contraction occurred. And I forgot of the process of how these things work. And I was like, holy shit, I'm failing. This sucks. What am I going to do? How am I going to get to the other side of this? And then I just remember, like, no, this is actually a process, a bigger picture. And this is naturally part of what happens when a group, comes together and starts forming and does its stuff. Allowed me to relax and just kind of go with the flow of the rest of the next 3 days very successfully. Thank God.
Oh, I love it. Oh, that was so great. That's a perfect example. I've done that too. And I've thought, oh no, we're in the contraction state, or now they're in the part where, because real change is about to happen, all the resistances are up. Or
Oh,
even,
yeah. Yeah.
for my own self. Okay, I'm in the part where all my resistances are coming up because real change is going to happen. So sometimes knowing, that's why I see kind of my coaching as me. I see myself more as a midwife than a coach,
Oh,
helping.
I love Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I would
Mm,
say I'm the midwife, not the nanny. Like I like to be there, tell people like birthing these things.
exactly.
Uh, and yes, so part of it's that, and sometimes it's a reframe in how would they reframe the story they're in to make it a story of resilience, for example.
Mm,
Like, so right there, they're in a story of nothing is not working. It's da da da, how could you could just, how could this be a story of resilience? And so all of a sudden now they have to go into the imaginal realm,
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
go and create a new story that never existed.
Yep.
And it's not at that point whether it's true or not, but just in the act of doing it, they're creating new neural pathways. They're breaking the pattern. They're moving out of a stuckness into more pliableness.
What strikes me is like Joseph Campbell's hero's journey.
Yeah.
If you can if you can hold in your mind just that framework and go, oh, okay, I'm in this part of it, and this part fucking sucks, but that's okay. It's part of the larger story, and I'm the hero in this whole story. It's gonna be okay.
Yeah, like there's and I know for myself, like someone will say, um, to move from why does this always happen to me? And to move from just a quick reframe is what if it's not happening to you, it's happening for you? Like some people say it's happening through you, some people say it's happening for you. So I know when I was going through a really hard time and I was feeling like, why is this or I was feeling, I just was like, this is happening for me. So given that, what's mine to do? And that was a very big different answer than this is happening to me.
Yes,
I feel helpless. This is happening for me. So how do I partner with this to co-create? So that's a part of resilience, partnering with what's happening.
right. No, I love that. That's really good. I want to ask you to talk because I know you do groups, and I notice you do in the corporate space too.
Yeah.
And I've been doing some corporate consulting, team building exercises and stuff, or team building, including exercises for a wide variety of clients. I'm just thinking what you just shared. One of the things I find is, especially in corporate environments and even worse in military environments, except maybe in special operations, there's a little bit more agility mentally to do stuff outside, boxes and stuff. Do you find that there are some industries that are more open to out of the box thinking, and they're naturally organized that way, and they're naturally more creative, or are there subsets within industries that are more like that than not? Do you have what's your experience with that? 'Cause
That's
I'll
great.
give you an example.
Yeah.
If that would be helpful. Like you don't want your accountants to be creative to a certain extent. You want them within the law, so you're not, the IRS doesn't come or the SEC doesn't come and investigate you and throw you in prison. So there's this narrowed creativity. But if you're creating a product or your sales team is selling the product or whatever, obviously you want a lot of creativity because you want to be adaptive to the changing market and the customers and their needs, wants, and desires. That kind of stuff is my question for you.
Yeah. So I guess I would say a few things. That's a very rich question and I love it. Uh, uh, um, you would, an accountant actually could benefit a lot by being creative. You might not want them to take creative liberties with your taxes. You want them to obey the laws, but
Okay.
they may be creative with how their time management, so they're not as stressed. They may be creative with how they organize their business or how they
Nice. Okay.
in clients or how they market or how, so they still want to be totally creative people, but you want them very knowledgeable and to stay within the rules of, doing your taxes.
Okay.
Um,
Sure. I like that.
you know what I mean? So it's a different, and so, and then you're talking about like in a product development, kind of in open. So there's creating within constraints and structures that exist, which is one type of creativity. And then there's that kind of like initial anything's possible, open, blank page and divergent space. So that's very divergent. And that's where you don't go into judgment. You just enter the exploration space and unfortunately, many people do brainstorming verbal only, just like, let's think of ideas. And we have a right brain that is a nonverbal part of us that's so incredibly rich, with visual thinking and when you're embodying one way to like a one way to get ideas about a product is embody it,
Yeah.
act from it, talk to it, dialogue with it, embody it, you know, um, or imagine, using metaphors or using like there's, going into the imagination and taking, and playing with timelines, like imagining it's 50 years from now or 20 years. So there's so many different ways to engage the creativity. Uh, as far as your question about are different types of industries more do you open to the creativity? I would say the different types, depending what kind of creativity they need. would be I would design a different way of facilitating depending what they were looking for. It's all, from the objectives like coming, walking back from them and going, given who they are and what they would like, how could I design it that best suits them? So it may be a product developer and an account would have different need, you might design it differently. I know that I tend to work a lot with leaders. I've done lots of leadership programs and I do a lot of like creative thinking for leaders or improv for leaders or storytelling for variety. And they're in all sometimes they're just a certain, from a particular organization. And other times it's just a general leadership kind of group and they're all different leaders. So again, both of those might have a different. But I will say how everyone's open usually to some kind of creative thinking. How boundary and or edge pushing you are with the creativity might depend on the group.
Right, 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 right. I heard you say improv. You've mentioned improv a few times, and I have to give you credit because you and I spoke. I mean, we've spoken on and off for like 20 years now, but it's probably over a decade ago, and you brought up improv, and we had a conversation about it. And I've actually since then encouraged quite a few of my clients who I find to be very rigid and scared in social settings to do improv. And they've had major breakthroughs, which is awesome for them. I'm really happy for them. They're scared as shit going in, and they love it coming out. And so I just want to publicly acknowledge, thank you for that suggestion many, many moons ago.
Uh, yes, well, shout out to improv because it changed my life. I used to be did feel like I had a calling, and then all of a sudden I had this big realization that I was terrified of being in front of or leading groups. And so I did Toastmasters for a while, and that helped to a point. And then I started doing improv, and my whole life, I remember leaving the improv going, well, now I could talk in front of a
That's
now I
awesome.
could get yeah, and then I started weaving a lot of the improv, this was like over 20 years ago, weaving a lot of the improv into the work. I thought at that time, I was like, wow, I think this cool thing is I just discovered it and found out there was a whole applied improv network. Um, at that time, when I discovered them or when I found out about them, there was 75 people in there. And so there were a few people around the country really seeing the value of applied improv in the workplace. At that point, there were 75, and now there's thousands. And,
That's awesome.
it's all, so it's trans. So I believe it should be a prerequisite for anybody. I think it should be in every high school, college, elementary school because it's so transformative.
It definitely is. Well, this is great, Michelle. I appreciate you talking about the creative side of resilience. Where can people find out more about your work, your book, of course, and a special offer for our
Yeah,
video audience?
absolutely. Okay. I have a company called the Center for Creative Emergence. And that is creativeemergence.com,
Nice.
creativeemergence.com. And then my coaching is creativeemergencecoaching.com. And then my book, I have it right here.
That's all that over your left shoulder.
Outer Breaks, A Facilitator's Guide to Cultivating Creativity. And it's on Amazon. Or you could go to Pattern Breaks. There's a link to it on my websites too. And then anyone who's listening to this, I will give you a link to put in the show notes that if they click there, they can get a free 14-page PDF that I have. It's called Creative Resilience, and it has principles and mindsets and practices and questions and contexts that will give free to anyone who's interested.
That's awesome. Me and my peoples appreciate you. Thank you.
Sydney, it's always so great to talk to you, Michael.
Yeah, same here, Michelle. And let me definitely encourage folks to check out your book, check out your free offer. Thank you so much for that. And check out your website and your work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.